Hello everyone, this is Shadow Dragon with another Pokemon Go video. So, what's going on with those EX passes? No one truly knows, and there are still people out there who have not even had a chance to fight and capture a Mewtwo. And yet there are people out there with like 2 or 3 already. So how do we get these EX passes? We don't truly know all the details of it, so I just wanted to share how I think I got mine, because I have probably a different pattern than a lot of people, so I was actually surprised to get one. And I think maybe if you follow certain things I do, maybe you'll have a higher chance of getting one. So just to recap, when these first went out, the very first week of testing hit a lot of landmarks. And then the second week was Sprint stores. And then the third week, Starbucks. So while this was going on, pretty much all the players were going on this wild goose chase where they were trying to hit things that seemed to fit the characteristics of the previous week. So that was a bit crazy, and it got a lot of us running around and hitting those locations. So after all of that, on the fourth week, they just sent out like invitations to random locations that didn't fit the characteristics of any of those. So even though I had like raid wins in landmarks, Starbucks, and Sprint stores, I was just surprised I got some random church in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, getting that actually made me think a lot about like how they figure things out. Because the church that I had it at wasn't even in a location that I had a recent win in. But it's a place that I do regular maintenance in. The last raid win I had there, like before the Mewtwo raid, was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. So they're definitely pulling data pretty far back, but I think there's more to it than just a raid win. So if you're just trying to hit like raid locations that you haven't played at yet, that there's going to be more to it than that. Now I live in the city, so a lot of the raid locations are closely packed. So if you're in a more rural area where the gyms are more spread out and you're hitting like wide locations that are far away from each other, that could be a factor. So I think they're pulling in a lot of other data besides just the raid win. I get the sense that they're pulling in every type of gameplay, or every type of gameplay that a distance or location can be tagged to. Because I'm thinking that the location where I got the pass, I do a lot of gameplay activity around that area, and not necessarily raiding either. So this is just like spinning stops, doing gym battles, and capturing for Stardust, pretty much everything else. And why would all that be factored in? As we know, they've been trying to combat spoofing, and the Mewtwo raid is a very special raid. It's an exclusive raid, so they definitely don't want spoofers getting in on that. And they could if they're spoofing like gyms or regular raid wins in several different locations. But a spoofer wouldn't have like the other gameplay around the area. It would be pretty easy to tell, because people don't spoof to get Stardust. They're doing it for like gym battles and raid wins. So you could even put gym battles in that mix, because like since those are spoofed, so since those can be spoofed, there may not be as much weight on that as like regular Pokemon captures and spinning stumps. Um, yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out, especially for the new players, um, if you go to like your Pokemon stats screen and scroll to the bottom, like you see here where it says New York, United States, 12/12/2016. This used to have a link, and then like if you tapped on it, it would pull up a map of where you actually caught it. I don't remember which update that disappeared, but be, just because it's not there doesn't mean they're not tracking it. So I believe they're still pulling that data. They're just not displaying it for us. Either maybe it's a memory thing, or maybe their analytics showed that no one was using it. But this used to show a map of the exact capture location. So they are able to track this type of gameplay as well, as accurate as a latitude longitude coordinate. So depending on how strict they are, how far back, and how much data they're pulling, they could have a very good idea of where you play the game, and they could make a good educated guess at where you live because they don't have your exact address and stuff. But through gameplay, they can see like heavy activity in certain locations. So if they did like a heat map, they could kind of figure out your pattern, and a spoofer just wouldn't have that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I think. It's a raid win plus a whole bunch of adjacent activity pulled from analytics on your gameplay pattern. And this applies to most cases of some of the well-known YouTubers as well. I follow all these channels I'm about to mention, and I watch all their videos. So I have an idea of, like, I guess most of their gameplay pattern. I mean, they're only recording a small portion of what they play, but just taking a guess. If you look at Trainer Tips and Reversal over the past few months, both of those guys were traveling around a lot, and they do shoot in a lot of different locations. So if you kind of heat mapped like where they've been recently, it might not seem like they have a solid foundation of like maintenance gameplay. I'll just call it maintenance gameplay, like your daily stuff, because they may have jumped around. So again, this is all theoretical, and it depends on how strict Niantic is with the algorithm in choosing it. But yeah, if Nick and Reversal didn't get him, I would have to tag that on their travel. So it's almost an opposite thinking, because the information that's public is that you need a raid win in a location. So the snap reaction to that is to do as many raid locations that you haven't done as quickly as possible, and that means to travel, because you want to hit locations you haven't been at. But if they're pulling this other data, that might actually hurt you. Like if you're spreading yourself out too much, if you travel just for raiding, you're not going to have the adjacent activity, the maintenance activity. Now, if we look at Sparky Joy, she does a lot of live streams at parks, and I imagine those are probably close to her. She's also done like California on and off. So if there's anything throwing the pattern off, it may be that. But I guess I didn't pay attention if she's always raiding in the same park, because I think that would be a factor. So it could be like, it's definitely some combination of location over time. So maybe like if you raid at a park consistently every week, it might be different than if you alternate weeks, like between two locations that are far apart. So that, I mean, that may be why she hasn't gotten one. Now, if we go look at the opposite, Prodigy's Nations he's already gotten two. He's been on two Mewtwo raids already. And if you look at all of his videos, it's in, all of his gameplay locations are within two different parks close to him. And he did have, like, I think that 1 week in Las Vegas, but other than that, I think he's pretty much stayed in the same place. So I think, so that does kind of follow, like, my theory. The one YouTuber that seems to break this pattern, though, is Pokemon Master Holly. Because I feel like most of her videos are, you know, within the downtown area of Philadelphia. And she's been pretty consistent with, like, some travel on and off. It might be that the Euro trip that throws it off, if I had to take a guess. But I felt like her gameplay was in a pretty consistent location over the past few months. So I think, yeah, of all the ones I mentioned, that's probably the one question mark. But I think that's pretty much all I can gather based on how I think I got mine. Now, if we recap, like, the more recent weeks, so after those 3 or 4 weeks, the EX raid passes went on a break. So I actually thought they were done, but then they came back like a couple of weeks ago, and last week Niantic put out a message that they were trying to target mostly the people who haven't gotten one yet. So that's not a hard thing to do in the algorithm. You keep the same algorithm and you add an if statement to it to kind of favor the people who haven't had one. Now when they did that, it seemed very quiet in the New York area. Like when they did that change, nobody from my raid group got it. So even though they tried to target people who haven't had one, they may have favored location. And now this recent week, they sent out a pretty long notice. It's different from their previous EX passes, which were, I think, 1 to 2 days notice. For this week, they sent out the invites on Thursday, I believe, for November 26th. So that's a very long notice, and it breaks all the patterns of the previous ones. But for this one, it's a mixture of both people who haven't been on one, plus a lot of plus also repeat players. So it's a chance for everyone this time. But I felt like, again, it was pretty quiet in the New York area. Like, I just didn't hear a peep about it, and only a handful of people in my raid group have gotten it. Overall, I think the EX passes have been pretty light in New York, like in proportion to the number of players that play this game, and that feels a bit odd. So I think that's where they're kind of looking more at, like, the square mileage of things rather than the populace of a city. So that's probably a factor or non-factor, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I just wanted to put out this video and give some details on my patterns. Maybe if you give it a try, it'll help increase your chances. But anyway, good luck with the next round of EX passes, and I hope everyone eventually gets one. Thanks for watching. Okay, something else I forgot to mention regarding my theory about adjacent activity is the other reason they might want to pull this data is because they want like close to 100% attendance based on the invitations. They want almost everyone to show up, if not everyone. So when they pull this data, they're kind of estimating like where people live, and so therefore, if they do the invites based on where they think people live, it should increase the attendance. So I think that's the other reason why they might want to do that. So yeah, just to recap, it's basically combat spoofing and get 100% attendance for these raids. And I think pulling pretty moderate to strict data on all of a player's activity, it does pretty much solve those two things. And then if you look at how they roll out the passes, like if you put all that together, that would actually be a pretty like heavy query, like that versus simply only a raid win in a location over a period of time. Like that would be really quick. So the invitations rolling out slowly could be just that query running. Okay, that's it for real. So good luck trying to get yours, and thanks for watching.